I'm delighted to be joined by Jacqueline Bruce and Leigh Paterson from Undisturbed. I really loved your tagline, Rethinking Bathroom Homewares, and I'm excited to have you on today. Just for the purposes of the audience, it might be quite nice for you to introduce yourselves and let us know who you are and what the business does, and then we can get started.
Cool. Hi Leigh, really pleased to be on here today. My name's Jax. I am the founder of Undisturbed, and yeah, so basically we're designing for a better world. So we had a bit of a rebrand through some Zero Waste Scotland funding, and that's the kind of new strapline to encompass what we're trying to do, because yeah, really we're sort of taking everything back to the design right at the start of what we're doing. So we are starting off in the bathroom, solving the problems created by bad design and bad material choices. So specifically looking at in the shower, things like shower curtains and shower screens and shower storage, and the problems that they're causing for the planet, but also the problems that they're causing for people. So things like mould and waste, and also obviously the problems that are being created by poor material choices, greenhouse gas emissions, fossil fuel use, and waste. So yeah, we are designing new products that are hopefully going to be beneficial, or will be beneficial, for people and for the planet.
Amazing, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Leigh. My background is in product design, product development. So I kind of came on board with Undisturbed over 2 years ago now. Time has flown. So yeah, I kind of came on board to help. At the time it was one product. Now we're developing a range. We're getting really close to launches and so on, and it's just been quite a journey. So I'm sure Jax will go through that as we're kind of going through the chat. But yeah, that's where my background comes in, and that's where Jax and I have kind of formed this team working at Undisturbed now.
Amazing. No, thanks for giving us an introduction there. I'm really excited to dig into this, because I think there's going to be some pretty topical stuff and really important stuff for us to speak about. But yeah, we'll just get cracking into it. So what the first question I wanted to ask was just digging a wee bit deeper. So you've told us a wee bit about what the business does, but it'd be really good to understand a wee bit more about the company's mission. Yeah, let's start there. Tell us a bit more about the mission and the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, so we are a profit for purpose, which I suppose is maybe a fairly new phrase that sort of came about in the last few years, I guess, because we didn't really fit into like many businesses don't fit into the social enterprise or community interest company bracket. So we had to set up as a limited company, but we wanted to make sure that people knew that we would be using our profits to do good things. So that phrase, profit for purpose, is something that you see a lot now, and that we consider ourselves as. So I guess aside from the sort of sustainable actual products, that profit for purpose, what we're actually going to do with the money that we make from selling the products is, I suppose we've got a kind of 3-pillar strategy, if you like. People, planet and pause is what we like to call it. So from a people perspective, there's 3 billion people that don't have access to hand washing facilities around the world, which I think, we take for granted showers, and as far as we're concerned, showers shouldn't be a luxury. We think everyone should have access to a clean shower every day. I mean, we all know how good it is to get into a shower after we've had a hard day or a tough workout or whatever. So to think that there are people in the world who can't even wash their hands is just unthinkable in this day and age. So yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago when I first started out doing all this stuff, I spoke to a lot of people, and I did speak to someone who was involved in the WASH programme, the UNICEF WASH programme, and that's something that they do. So it would be great to potentially get involved in that one day, or even be doing something as amazing as setting up our own. programme for that. Planet, I mean, aside, as I've already said, designing out waste and bringing better products that benefit people and planet, we'll also want to contribute to other charities that do good things for the planet. We've already been doing that we've been selling some of our little pocket pouches for storing naked bars in, and we've been donating money to charity, all the profits, because they've been made during our product development phase. So we've been donating to MCS, Marine Conservation Society, for the planet side of that. And see, I'm going off on a tangent already. The people side of that is Mind, so we've also got a strong connection to mindfulness, and using your shower every day as an opportunity to practice mindfulness, to just be in the shower. And then Pause, because we wouldn't be surviving on this planet if we didn't have our four-legged and every other number-legged creatures around about us. So we've also donated money to SSPCA as well from the sale of our pocket pouches, and that's something that we want to continue. We've talked about doing limited editions. I mean, this is all kind of way in the future, but bringing out limited editions that are specific for a certain, maybe bee-friendly thing, and the design would be based around hexagons or whatever. So we've got lots of ideas around that, and I think going back to our sort of rebrand and the designing for a better world, that's kind of encompasses everything together, I suppose, of what we're trying to do. It sounds like we're trying to do loads, but we just
I love it. I think it's a pretty, well, obviously us being a branding agency, the power of words is really important in getting a message across, and I love that tagline. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
So Jacqueline, we've spoke a wee bit before about kind of the position against kind of fast homewares.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot, actually thinking about it, I've heard a lot and I've followed a lot of news about kind of fast fashion and stuff, but I've never heard this phrase that much. So I find it really, really intriguing. But you've obviously got some thoughts on it. So tell us more about fast homewares and your stance against them.
I think fast homewares is something that's just sort of started to come into light in the last few years as well. It's been getting some traction in large and big magazines and big names now as well, talking about fast homewares. I mean, you only need to look at shops like B&M and I can't even think where else. Even Next, I suppose, could be considered fast homewares, fast fashion. I wouldn't say I'm against fast homewares. I think everyone wants to have nice things, so it's nice that people have access to that stuff. If we can't solve the problem of fast homewares unless we solve the root issues that are behind fast homewares. So the root causes are people not being paid enough, so people have to go and buy fast homewares because they can't afford to buy quality products. So I guess for me, tackling the root issue of what fast homewares represents is really the key. I mean, if everybody was paid well, if everyone could afford to have good quality products that lasted, and everybody was working in a circular business model, I mean, that's the utopia, isn't it? Then fast homewares wouldn't be wanted or needed, because people would demand quality, they would demand nice things, they wouldn't be wanting things that just lasted for 6 months or a year and then they were getting put in landfill. So there's people at the moment who are exploiting other people to make money, and those people who are being exploited are also the ones that are potentially having to go and buy the cheaper end of the offering. So it's nice to have nice things, and that's the thing with fast fashion as well. It's a kind of sticking plaster. If you can't just say to the fast fashion industry, you need to stop what you're doing, we need to address the much bigger issues around all of that stuff.
No, I totally agree, and I think what you mentioned there about kind of circular economy, I think what we're learning, and actually we're maybe way past learning, is things like recycling products and stuff in isolation isn't really enough, and more needs to be done. So I think actually like design, better quality design and more thoughtfulness towards how we create products is actually one of the most important things in kind of shifting away from this kind of disposable, like kind of linear approach that we have to products just now. That kind of leads on to my next question. So Leigh, I'm going to pass this one to you if that's all right. But if you could just talk us through your views on circular economy, we can go quite high level. So let us know your thoughts on, and maybe for the audience, kind of what a circular economy is, but then maybe delve in a wee bit more to from a product development perspective. That'd be quite nice.
Sure, absolutely. So I've studied circular economy quite extensively, and there's actually over 100 definitions in literature about what the circular economy is, which I think is quite an astounding fact. And that in itself is an issue, but we'll come on to that. So I think in general what the circular economy is the idea of moving away from, as you said, the linear economy, which is generally like you take what you need to, you make what you want, and then you waste. So once its use is done, it's kind of go to landfill or incineration or whatever. Circular economy is about breaking that circle, breaking that line and turn it into a circle. So yes, okay, you have to take stuff in order to make it and then use it, but to try and loop those materials back around into various different forms. So be it they get reused over and over, or they get broken back down in the way that recycling is, to go back through the loop. And the idea is that you would reduce the amount of wastes, be it material wastage or energy waste, heat waste, any of these kind of wastes as you go. So the idea is to try and limit or remove waste where possible, and a utopian approach, again, it would be basically to have no waste at all. So that's kind of where I see circular. From a product design perspective, I think that's very difficult. I think for a startup company like ourselves, it really is quite a challenge because you're very reliant on your suppliers. You're very reliant on being able to access suppliers who can achieve what you're looking for in your business. So be that circularity, which is obviously what Jax and I would be striving for. You know, when you're at the SME side of things and a startup side of things, it's very difficult to access kind of suppliers that would be able to tick those boxes. So from a product development side of things, I think that's really one of the key difficulties with circular economy for us. The other thing is that, as we've kind of said, it is circular economy is a great thought, and it's been around for over 50 years, which is another surprise. But it's really just became a buzzword for the last 5-10 at a push. And so everyone's now thinking, oh great, we need to be circular and it'll be fine, but you need to appreciate that you really have to consider everything. So that goes from your energy, the machinery that you're using, your logistics, your materials, you know, absolutely everything. It's not just about, okay, I'll get this recycled plastic and it's recycled again, so that's fine. You have to really consider the big picture, and I think from a product development perspective, that's quite a challenge. So I think for us, whilst that's our ultimate goal, we kind of have to be realistic at this stage and say, okay, well, we're striving for that perfection, if you want, under the circular economy banner. But at this time, this is what we can achieve on our journey to that. But I think it would be very difficult for any kind of startup to achieve that off the bat. Although I definitely think it is something that you have to think of from the design point of view. There's no point having developed a product and then you get customers coming back saying, oh well, it's kind of reaching its end of its life, and then trying to work out what to do with it. you really need to think of it from the design stage, not when it's already in use.
No, that's really interesting, and I think from my very limited experience, what I've kind of came across is that businesses and individuals get a little bit overwhelmed because they're like, there's so much that I can do, where do I possibly start? So I think perfection is something to aim towards, but actually just bedding this sort of process into like early stage design and even just conversation is quite important. Just picking up on what you mentioned about kind of supply chain. Don't know if there's anything, and this is to either of you, any insights you can give on kind of if a business is looking to kind of evaluate a supply chain or build relationships, like how easy is it, how hard is it, have you got any tips around that? Because I think collaboration is going to be key to solving some of the problems that we face. Any thoughts?
Yeah, okay, I'll start. So I think the first thing that I would say is be open with when you're starting your discussions. So for example, we were looking for a manufacturer for our storage product, and so for that we really opened the conversation saying by like, here's the design, here's what we're looking for, but we're looking for it in a sustainable way, and this is the requirements for that. Is this something you're able to achieve, or are you kind of on a way to do that, or is there is there a way that you're kind of meeting us in the middle with what you're already doing? So I think it's really important to kind of open that conversation and make sustainability and circular economy and whatever other kind of green buzzword you want to use. I think it's really important to put that in as normal instead of being like an add-on once you're further into the conversation. So for us, I think that was really important when we were establishing relationships. And I also think it's really important not to be afraid to ask those questions, and not to be afraid to say, listen, it's not something, if you are a supplier, say, listen, it's not something we've looked at before, or it's not really on our radar yet, or, actually maybe it's something we could consider, or we could try and get materials in for you on that way. And so I think having like an open and honest upfront conversation about it is probably the best way to go. For what I think. Jack?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. It's not been easy, and we got tied up in knots at the start as well, trying to be perfect, trying to do everything exactly by the book. Can you say? But I think when we realised that we would just tie ourselves in knots and continue going round and round in circles. So although the ultimate goal is to work with the perfect supplier, I think there's also a degree of there's got to be a degree of leeway and a degree of compromise as well at the moment. For example, hemp fabric, ideally one day we want to be field to fabric. We want to have our own hemp crops in Scotland, or be working very closely with the farmers in Scotland. We want to be taking that hemp off the fields and processing it all and making our own hemp fabric. And then we know exactly, it's our supply chain, it's our fabric, we know exactly what's happening with that, and we can be completely transparent, and we can take the steps we need to take to have clean water coming out of, clean water, clean energy, all that sort of good stuff. But at the moment, we have to take fabric from a supplier down south, then they're bringing it in from wherever they're bringing it in from, sometimes China, sometimes Eastern Europe. We're relying on their certifications, GOTS and all Ecotechs and all these kind of things. So yeah, I think it's great to have all those conversations, and the big sticking point for us has been recycled plastic, actually, because although everybody wants to be doing stuff with recycled plastic, it's just not there at the moment, so it's holding us back as well, because we're desperate to get on and do stuff, and we're having to make compromises. It's not when we're so focused on sustainability and trying to work towards being a waste-free business. It's hard to just get going. It's you're kind of like you're sort of held back a bit, but it is trying to make those compromises. So yeah, it's getting that balance between working with suppliers, and a lot of the time it is people that are willing to help, isn't it? And I think that's all I wanted to say there.
No, I find it fascinating, and Leigh, just picking up on your point about just being open and having conversations. So we at Outlaw, this is kind of what we do day to day. So we help people with strategy, and actually at the core of strategy, and what we found really useful with people is you'll have things like guiding principles. So what do we really stand for as a company? And what we found really useful is if you have really simple, easy to understand guiding principles written down and agreed on by your team, you can start to feed that into conversations that you have. So all of a sudden, complex decisions about should I buy from a supplier that does X or should I buy from a supplier that does Y, it's no longer complex because you've got a guiding principle. Okay, they don't or are not willing to look at sustainable practice, so we no longer will buy from them. So I think just understanding kind of your strategy can also be really useful, and give you the confidence to start these conversations.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's absolutely critical that you pick your morals is the wrong term, but you kind of pick where you want to stand, and that's where you kind of shoot from. And if you have to make compromises along the way, that's fine, that's understandable. Like, it's not, as I said, it's really not possible to achieve everything you want to achieve, especially as a startup. But if you have that kind of key issue where you're sticking to, it does make it much easier. So I think you're absolutely right in that approach. Like, absolutely.
Cool. So product development, circular economy. Before we move on, is there any? We'll have quite a mixture of people listening to this. So we'll have kind of product-based businesses, we'll have service-based businesses. But is there any tips that you would give business owners or individuals that are starting to look at product development, circular economy, changes to their business? Any advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think number one would be really to do your research. I'm not meaning go highly in depth and go and read like 100 articles on what circular economy is, but do your research and find what works for you. So I am a fan of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, because they do kind of break their opinion of circular economy down quite well, and it's quite a well referenced site. So find something like that works for you, that you're able to spend a couple hours on, and really just get a decent understanding of what circular economy is, because as you said, it has kind of come about as a bit of a buzzword, and I think a lot of people are kind of jumping on it without perhaps necessarily understanding the complexity of it. So I think definitely at the start, take some time, do a bit of research, do a bit of reading, and really get a decent understanding of it. There's a lot of tools and methodologies out there to help as well. So there's like Design for Sustainability guidelines, for example, that you can access. There's a lot of different tools, again, that probably quite easy to get through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation again, but there is other websites that you're able to find it, and really just find these tools that are going to help you, because if you spend an hour looking for a tool and actually find one that you're like, actually this is quite easy, I can understand it, I get what I'm going, it's going to save you a lot of time. So I think absolutely get your head around that. And the other thing for us is really, like, as we said, like, don't try to be perfect with it. Like, absolutely design to the best of your abilities, and really try to design. Designers should probably be aware of DFX's principles. So design for X, and where you substitute the X for a word. So design for sustainability should be in there. It's if you're designing a product that's going to be used, you would design for ergonomics, how the person holds it. But you should, I think, now in this day and age where circular economy, zero emissions, all of this is now becoming really to the forefront, that when you are a product designer, you should really be incorporating a sustainability principle at the start, and really trying to think, okay, well, once my customers have finished with this product, what are they going to do with it? You know, can they take it apart? Are they going to take it apart and put it into the different recycling boxes? Maybe not. Like, so, you know, I think you definitely have to think of the end of the line rather than just what you're achieving at the start. So from a product development side of things, that's probably the tips I would give you. Don't know, Jax, if you want to add to that.
If you're saying there's people maybe more service based, or even just anyone watching it that's watching this who might not even have made a start, or who has maybe just started sort of on the road to sustainability or circular economy, I think it's just focusing on one thing first, and not, you know, we said at the start, I think you said, Leigh, at the start, you know, there's so much to do, and where do you start? It's picking one thing. I mean, when I started on my journey towards sustainability, you know, I went totally zero. I was trying to go zero waste. I was trying to go vegan. I was trying to do it, and I was in so much guilt and shame. I was like drenched in planet shame and all the rest of it, you know. So I think when you just have to kind of think, right, okay, I'm one person or I'm one business, and what actually are we doing that's going to give us a quick win? So it could even be just as simple as using a refillable cup for your coffee every day rather than going and getting a takeaway cup every day, or it could be sorting out the recycling. As much as I'm against that whole thing, I think businesses should be taking responsibility for doing all that, but as it is, we have to organise that. So it could be implementing, when we're all back in the office, you know, recycling, or at home, just being more aware of what can be recycled. And one thing that I quite like to do that kind of makes me more aware is, and I wrote an article about this, is I don't want to be considered a consumer, because then you get into that mindset of just being sold to. So I actually kind of posed the question, well, what if we actually were all designers? And what if we were all to look at every single thing that we throw out and think, what could I do with that? What else could I be doing with that? And actually then you're thinking about waste becoming a resource, which is essentially what we should be trying to do just now, is turning that waste into something. So like even your food compost bin, you know, when I shell beans or whatever, there's these lovely shells that could be used for something, and so yeah, I think that's quite an interesting way to look at it, actually, as everything that I put in a bin somewhere could actually be turned into, could be turned into something. So yeah.
No, I kind of resonated. I don't know what the term you used, but was it planet guilt?
Yeah.
or something like.
Yeah.
I think, like, in terms of the grand scheme of things, I'm relatively new to like exploring how I can do better, and I definitely experienced that. I feel like once you see things, it's very difficult to unsee them, and it can become really overwhelming really quickly. But I think ultimately we're no good if we're completely paralysed by guilt and inaction. So actually, I think they're really useful tips, like that one around do one thing. Like one thing executed well can make a massive difference. So I think that's really good. And in terms of like just wider sustainability, people like what I've just explained, if there's people on the kind of at the stage of starting to see things, starting to realise the kind of how big the challenges are, is there any tips or advice that you would give people, I guess, to avoid what we've just discussed?
The thing that I wrote down, because obviously you'd sent the questions over before, was transparency is a must, because we're not all perfect, because we're not doing things perfectly. and because there are a lot of people out there who are becoming more savvy in what they're buying and who they're buying from, but there's also people who aren't seeing past the greenwashing that's rife amongst transnational corporations and big brands and all the rest of it. I think it's up to people who are conscious and aware and who do want to do the right thing to make sure that they are as transparent as possible, and that's something that we hold very highly, and what our values are with Undisturbed is that we're not perfect yet, and we might never ever be, because who knows what's going to happen in the future or whatever, but as long as we are telling people this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, and this is, you know, where we plan to go, then we can take solace in that, you know, and we can be okay with not being perfect, knowing that we're at least being honest and open about what we are doing.
Yeah, and I think a lack of transparency has kind of got us to where we're at now.
Yeah.
I'm being met with loads of examples of this just now. So a guest who we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, it was our first ever guest, Scott Poynton. You might have watched his video. So he was the CEO of the Forest Trust and now runs a company called My Carbon Zero, and basically they're building a system where businesses and individuals can offset carbon emissions by buying carbon vouchers through things like carbon sequestration and stuff like that. But what Scott's doing really well is actually traceability, so making sure that the projects can make an impact, that the funds are going directly there, and that the spend is implemented and businesses can see it straight back to the kind of source. Because I think a lot of businesses just now are still doing the surface level stuff and maybe not asking the follow-on questions that are needed to make sure that there is that level of transparency. So I think that's a really good point.
Leigh, did you have anything on that one?
I guess all I would add is, you know, we've said it maybe 3 or 4 times, like, don't try to be perfect, you will tie yourself in knots. Like, you know, as Jack said, take one thing at a time and work on it and see how good you can get it. And then, you know, set your goals. So, you know, as Jack's used the hemp example really well, that is our end goal, is, you know, in however many years' time to be able to produce and have our own supply chain. But at this moment, this is the best we can do. And if you look at our website, you'll see we've outlined where all our materials come from, where everything is sourced, the companies, the inks, you name it, everything's on there, and that to us is key. The other thing I think is not to, I think you see it quite a lot in that, you know, oh well, that company's doing worse, so we're okay. You know, so that they're producing more pollutants, or they're producing more emissions, or they're throwing away more waste, or they're landfilling more stuff, and I think that's fine if you're trying to, you know, benchmark yourself or whatever, but just because someone's doing worse doesn't mean you're doing better. So you should always be, I feel like for us, we're not trying to compare ourselves to other companies, we're trying to compare ourselves to what our ideal is, which is circular economy. So we do need to do better in time in order for us to achieve those goals, and so it doesn't matter to us if another homeware company is doing something better or worse. You know, we've got our own goals, and I think if people are going to achieve their carbon emission targets or their sustainability targets, they really need to internalize that, and instead of thinking I'm doing better because they're doing worse, you need to think, okay, I could still do better, more better than I am. How can I achieve that? And so I think that for me is kind of number one when it comes to actually achieving these targets.
I think you've just hit us with a golden nugget there, because we're going through a bit of a learning process in our business just now, and I actually think goal setting, like when you write something down, and it's important and it's part of your business DNA, just like a financial target or goal, or a culture target or goal. I actually think that's what's needed. It needs to be up there with financial decision making. There needs to be goals that people are working towards. So an example, we've just and it relates back to this, you can't be perfect, that you've highlighted, I think is really important as well. We've realised that it's not realistic for us to have 100% of our portfolio as sustainable purpose-led businesses this year. So what we've actually said is the immediate goal is 0% are harmful businesses or businesses that purpose wash, and we've set a target of 12 months to be 100% purpose-led businesses that we work with. So that combination of no being perfect and setting goals I think is really good. So that's the golden nugget of the conversation.
Perfect. I'm glad that came somewhere.
Okay, I think that's. Is there anything else you want to add, or happy with that?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
No, end on that high, I think is it.
Aye, well, that was amazing. Thank you very much. I think there's a lot of useful advice, and actually a lot of simple things that people can start to think about, which is really important, because complexity just causes paralysis. So I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. Just before we finish off, Jax, if you could give us a kind of whistle-stop tour of how people can find out or follow up with you guys, and how they can find out more about what you're doing at Undisturbed.
Cool, yep. So you can go onto the website, our fabulous new website, it's beundisturbed.co.uk. We deliberately don't use social media a lot, but we do have an Instagram and Facebook, because you've got to. So we're at beundisturbed on both Instagram and Facebook. And if anybody wants to get in touch with any questions, can drop an email to hello@beundisturbed.co.uk or connect with myself or with Leigh on LinkedIn. My Sunday name on LinkedIn is Jacqueline Bruce, and you can get Leigh on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, more than happy to make connections and hopefully get a few visits to the website. That'd be nice, and some follows maybe on Instagram.
I'm sure you will. And I'm glad now that you've called yourself Jax, I can now call you Jax, because I wasn't sure. I was like Jack. Yeah. But I've now made the transitions.
Congratulations.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you later.